Have you ever wondered why some people seem to see straight through the masks we all wear, while others remain blinded by surface appearances? Why do certain individuals recognize patterns in human behavior that escape the rest of us entirely? Why can some people predict how a story will unfold, whether in relationships, politics, or life itself, while others are perpetually surprised by outcomes that seemed obvious in hindsight? The Swiss psychiatrist Carl Gustav Jung spent his life exploring this mystery. His answer wasn't that some people are simply smarter or more observant. Instead, Jung discovered something far more profound, that the depth of truth you can perceive depends entirely on how willing you are to confront the depths within yourself. Jung believed that most people live on the surface of their own consciousness, like swimmers who never venture beyond the shallow end of a vast ocean. They see only what their conscious mind allows them to see, filtered through layers of social conditioning, personal fears, and comfortable illusions. But there are others, and perhaps you're one of them, who dare to dive deeper, who are willing to explore the darker, more complex waters of the human psyche. And it's these individuals who emerge with a kind of vision that seems almost supernatural to those still floating in the shallows. To understand why you might see truths that others miss, we need to explore Jung's most revolutionary idea, the collective unconscious. Imagine, if you will, that beneath your personal thoughts and memories lies a vast underground river that connects every human being who has ever lived. This isn't metaphysical speculation. Jung observed that across all cultures and throughout history, the same fundamental patterns appear in our myths, dreams, and stories. The collective unconscious is like having access to humanity's hidden hard drive. When you learn to tap into it, you begin to recognize the ancient patterns that drive human behavior. You see the same archetypal dramas playing out in your workplace, your family, and in the grand theater of politics and society. The hero's journey, the wise old mentor, the shadow figure, the great mother, the trickster, these aren't just literary devices. They're the fundamental programs running in the background of human consciousness. Most people remain unconscious of these patterns, which is why they're constantly surprised when the narcissistic boss inevitably falls, when the too-good-to-be-true relationship reveals its dark side, or when the promising political movement turns authoritarian. But when you understand the archetypal forces at play, these outcomes become not just predictable, but inevitable. Think about it. Have you ever met someone and immediately felt like you'd encountered them before, not as an individual, but as a type? Have you ever watched a news story unfold and felt like you'd seen this exact narrative countless times throughout history? This isn't déjà vu, it's your unconscious mind recognizing the eternal patterns that Jung called archetypes. But here's where Jung's insights become truly challenging. The reason most people can't see these deeper truths isn't lack of intelligence. It's because the truth often requires us to acknowledge what Jung called the shadow. The shadow is everything about ourselves and our world that we don't want to admit exists. It's the darkness we've spent our lives trying to avoid, deny, or project onto others. Jung discovered that we can only perceive in the external world what we're willing to acknowledge within ourselves. If you refuse to admit that you're capable of selfishness, cruelty, or deception, you'll be blind to these qualities in others, right up until the moment they devastate you. But if you've done the painful work of acknowledging your own capacity for darkness, you develop what Jung called shadow sight, the ability to recognize these hidden motivations in yourself and others. This is why people who face their own demons often seem to possess an almost uncanny ability to read human nature. They're not necessarily more intelligent, they're simply willing to see what others refuse to acknowledge. They've integrated their shadow, and in doing so, they've gained access to a more complete vision of reality. Consider the person who always believes they can fix, or save, problematic partners. They're often blind to red flags that seem obvious to everyone else. Why? Because acknowledging the manipulative or destructive nature of their partner would force them to confront uncomfortable truths about their own psychological patterns. Perhaps their need to feel needed, their fear of abandonment, or their unconscious attraction to chaos. The truth seers among us are those who've had the courage to face these uncomfortable realities about themselves. They've looked into their own abyss, and paradoxically, this has given them clearer vision when looking outward. Jung called the process of becoming whole, individuation, the journey of integrating all aspects of yourself, light and dark, conscious and unconscious, into a unified being. This process inevitably separates you from the crowd, because most people are living unconsciously, driven by forces they don't understand and refusing to acknowledge parts of themselves they find unacceptable. When you begin to see the puppet strings that control human behavior, the unconscious complexes, the archetypal patterns, the projected shadows, you simultaneously gain a kind of freedom and bear a certain isolation. You see through the social games that others take seriously. You recognize the psychological patterns that drive people's choices, often before they do. You can predict how relationships will unfold, how organizations will behave, how societies will respond to crisis. But this clarity comes with a cost. You may find yourself feeling like an outsider, watching the world with a mixture of compassion and sadness as you observe people repeating the same unconscious patterns generation after generation. You see the potential for growth and healing, but you also see how most people resist the very awareness that could set them free. Jung himself described this predicament. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But becoming who you truly are means seeing reality as it truly is, not as we wish it were, not as we've been told it should be, but as it actually is, with all its beauty and terror intertwined. Here's one of Jung's most profound insights. We don't see the world as it is, we see the world as we are. Everything we perceive is filtered through the lens of our own psyche. This means that the clearer and more integrated your inner world becomes, the more clearly you can perceive the outer world. Most people live in a world of psychological projections. They see their own unconscious contents reflected everywhere around them. The person who's secretly afraid of their own aggression sees enemies everywhere. The individual who can't admit their own selfishness is constantly surprised by others' betrayals. The one who refuses to acknowledge their own capacity for irrationality becomes a prisoner of their own blind spots. But when you've done the work of self-awareness, when you've faced your shadows, integrated your contradictions, and accepted your full humanity, you stop projecting your unconscious contents onto the world. Instead, you begin to see others and situations with remarkable clarity. You can distinguish between what belongs to you and what belongs to them. You can separate your reactions from objective reality. This is why the most perceptive people are often those who've been through significant psychological work, therapy, or spiritual practice. They've learned to clean the lens through which they view the world. They've discovered that the obstacle to clear perception isn't out there, it's the unexamined contents of their own psyche. If you've recognized yourself in this description, if you often feel like you see patterns and truths that others miss, Jung would say you're both blessed and burdened. You have access to deeper currents of reality, but you also bear the responsibility that comes with such vision. You might find yourself in the position of the ancient oracles, able to see what's coming, but often powerless to prevent it. You watch people make choices that you know will lead to suffering, but you understand that true wisdom can't be given, it can only be earned through experience. You see through the illusions that keep others comfortable, but you must be careful not to become cynical or superior. Jung believed that those who develop this deeper vision have a responsibility, not to impose their insights on others, but to live authentically from their truth and to be available when others are ready to see more clearly themselves. You become a living example of what's possible when someone is willing to face the full spectrum of human experience. This doesn't mean you should expect others to see what you see, or become frustrated when they don't. Instead, Jung suggests we hold our insights lightly, with compassion for those who aren't yet ready to dive into deeper waters. After all, you weren't always able to see what you see now. Your vision developed gradually, through experience, suffering, and the willingness to question your own assumptions. Perhaps the greatest truth that Jung discovered is this: the more deeply you see into the nature of reality and human behavior, the more mysterious it all becomes. The person who thinks they have life figured out is living in the shallows. The one who truly sees recognizes that every answer opens up 10 new questions, every insight reveals 10 new depths to explore. If you're someone who sees truths that others can't, Jung would remind you that this gift comes with a profound humility. Yes, you may recognize patterns and predict outcomes that escape others. You might see through facades and understand motivations that remain hidden to the people experiencing them. But this clarity also reveals just how vast and unknowable the human experience truly is. The collective unconscious that gives you access to archetypal wisdom also connects you to the infinite mystery of what it means to be human. The shadow work that grants you deeper perception also reveals the endless complexity of the psyche. The individuation process that separates you from the crowd also connects you more deeply to the universal human experience. In the end, seeing clearly isn't about being superior to others, it's about being more fully human. It's about embracing the entirety of your nature so that you can perceive the entirety of life itself. It's about becoming conscious enough to choose your responses rather than being driven by unconscious forces. So if you've ever felt like you see the world differently than others, if you've found yourself recognizing patterns that escape those around you, if you sometimes feel burdened by insights you wish you could unsee, Jung would tell you that you're not alone, and you're not crazy. You're simply someone who's begun the journey of truly seeing. But remember, this vision isn't a destination, it's a process. Every day offers new opportunities to see more clearly, to integrate more fully, to become more conscious. The truth you see today is deeper than what you saw yesterday, but shallower than what you'll see tomorrow, if you continue to do the work of becoming who you truly are. The question Jung leaves us with isn't whether we have the ability to see more clearly, we all do. The question is whether we have the courage to look. Whether we're willing to face our shadows, explore our depths, and embrace the full mystery of human existence. Because in the end, the greatest truth Jung discovered is this: we don't see the world clearly despite our humanity. We see it clearly because we're willing to be fully human. And that willingness to embrace the totality of human experience, light and dark, conscious and unconscious, individual and universal, is what transforms ordinary perception into something approaching wisdom. The truth is waiting for those brave enough to see it. The only question is, are you ready to look?